So I noticed when I was reviewing the Twitter recommendation algorithm video that I had missed a bunch of chats that didn't show up to me in OBS. I'm not sure why. I noticed that people stopped saying things in the chat. I figured maybe everyone just got up to get a sandwich or something at the same time. But then when I looked at the actual YouTube video in the replay, there was a bunch of stuff that I hadn't seen, and so I just grabbed some screenshots of it. Um, I had seen Data Oil talking about asking about the dependency management, and then they had figured out that they're using Poetry. So that's kind of where I started off. And Martin is saying, oh, okay. So Data Oil says they're not able to use Bard in India. It's not yet released. It should be released at some point. I'm sure they're doing like beta and then releasing it bit by bit. I think ChatGPT did the same thing. And I would imagine that with these models, each new country, because countries typically have their own culture, so each new culture they'll have issues to iron out. And so that's probably why they're doing kind of a slower rollout rather than all at once. And obviously most of the people, well, not obviously, but probably most of the people who trained the AI are in the US. And that's probably one of the reasons why it's available in the US in a restricted beta invite only way right now. And then Martin says you can use a VPN. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that violates the terms of service for Bard, but you can check that out. Elliot's just saying hi. Hi, Elliot. Sorry I missed all these chats. And then Martin's telling us about Poetry, and they say it can be seen as a Python environment as well. It contains all the packages, and you should enter the Poetry shell if you want to use those packages. So I'm not sure how that differs from other shells or like virtual environments or stuff, but it seems to be part of the Python ecosystem that Python people know about. Elliot, I saw this. There's a similar comment in one of the videos, but something on Node 16/9. I think there was a comment about this VM had very low resolution, and it was like 16/10. So it had I think they're called like pillar boxing, whatever the so letterboxing is when the top and the bottom are kind of, you get these black strips, and then so it had these horizontal strips. So, but I switched it to 16/9, so hopefully it's no longer an issue. Lucas was telling me to look at the Louvain algorithm for community detection. I didn't see this during the chat. I don't know if this is the same algorithm that we looked a little bit at, but my apologies. MeSaber was asking why they use Scala. I have no idea why they use Scala. Scala is commonly used as a functional programming language in places where you can't get another functional programming language off the ground, or you want to be able to leverage the Java ecosystem. So there are lots of people who really like Scala a lot. I personally never used it, but it's a lot easier to sell a company on using Scala than something like Haskell, where to adopt, for example, Haskell or OCaml, you not only need to adopt the functional language itself, but you have to buy into the whole ecosystem. And there are these chicken and egg effects where languages and ecosystems that are tried and true in the industry they get the feedback that allows them to become more and more mature. And then once they're mature, it's easier to make the decision to use them. So things just keep going in a circle. So getting a new language off the ground is difficult. And Scala kind of bridges, the world between the functional world and the stable business world. Alper is asking, do we think that do I think that we should learn data structures like at intermediate level, or spend our time learning framework as a full stack dev? That's a good question. It's not one that I ever had to worry about. So I think, in my opinion, And I think this is the Google point of view as well. So the Google point of view is that you should know things like data structures and algorithms. Um, and then as far as learning specific frameworks or specific languages, it's just kind of assumed that people are able to pick them up on the job if they need to. Sure, they hire some people like who, they will hire people who are on like the C++ committee or whatever, or the Guido Van Rostrum, or I forget what exactly his surname is. The guy who created Python, he worked there for a while. So they'll hire these people who really really know the language. But by and large, the typical engineer, um, you're just expected to be good at learning, at like picking up languages and picking up frameworks, especially because at Google everything is custom. So I think that that approach makes sense, um, as long as you're quick at picking stuff up. The problem I see with learning something like a framework is that frameworks. There's kind of like a fashion component to them. A framework will figure out how to solve a certain problem, and then become a hot commodity for a while, and then over time, uh, other people will adopt the things that made that framework great, and then that framework will not be as hot anymore. And so the more you tie yourself to specific frameworks, the more kind of you're setting yourself up for chasing different things. That being said, I imagine that there are tons and tons and tons of jobs out there where there's just some um, startup founder or business person who all they know is that they use React, or that all they know is that they use what's another framework, Django or whatever. And so the job postings are going to be like, you have to know this framework. And so if you're, there's a lot to be said for like being really good at a specific framework and having a niche. And a lot of consultants set up their businesses so that they are only doing like whatever iOS apps or Android apps in Flutter or in React Native or whatever, and they can just bang them out. And that's super convenient when you're looking, like if you're if you're in a business and you're in a pinch and you need somebody who's like, and let's say you've got some app that somebody started and maybe left or is in bad shape. It's really convenient to be able to hire somebody who really knows the framework inside and out and can get a ton of work done in a weekend on that framework. So there is something to be said for like having that kind of niche. However, you kind of have to think about whether that's what you want in the long term. So you might start out that way to get a foot in the door, and then over time try to pivot to pivot away from working on kind of these framework specific skills to working on skills that are more evergreen, you might call them. And that's probably where the like the higher paying tech jobs is people who are not so tied to a framework but can pick up a framework quickly if they need to. So that's just a general sense. I'm sure there's all sorts of advice out there, but that's kind of what I've seen a little bit of. Yeah. Okay. And then Shamik is saying hi. Hi, Shamik. AMR, maybe Amar, says search Egypt. I didn't search Egypt, but that's a good question. I'm going to guess that since we didn't see it in the search, I'm assuming this means like we were looking at countries. And I don't think I have the Twitter code anymore, but maybe I can pull it up. Oops, that's YouTube. I'll do a search here. I think that GitHub will do partial matches, at least in this repo. I think I tried it before. So let's just try Egypt. Nothing. Let's try. What did we find before? Brazil? Mm, nada. Okay. So I'll download the code and look for Egypt, but we didn't see it in the labels, and we didn't see it in the abuse thing. So I'm gonna guess that it may not be there. And then the comments go a little bit longer. Let's see. And then Alper is asking if I still work for Google. I think I answered this maybe in a comment. I do not work for Google. I left Google maybe about a year ago. Um, and it was a good place to work, but I wanted to do something else. And then Raxnef is asking, can I tell a little bit about my bio, like education, work, what you worked on? There's a little bit about my bio in the YouTube description. I'm not saying much at this point, just because this is still a new thing for me, and it's grown at a rate that has really surprised me, and which I'm delighted by. But I want to think carefully about how much I say about my personal life, because it's nice to be able to take a break and hide, and let your brain recharge, um, from social media in general, right? At least that's how I do my thing. I used to be, years ago, I used to spend more time on social media. I found that taking a break really helps the mental wellness component. So I'm not trying to be like super private or anything, but I think I'm just gonna let the go slowly about things. But I will say at least what's in my bio. I did I have a PhD in math, um, and I did some graduate work in psychology before the math thing, and then I worked at um, I worked at a startup for maybe like a year or so, and then I got recruited by Google. And after Google, I left, and I'm working on something else now, which is uh, in stealth mode. And I've also been doing this, I guess, for the past few weeks, maybe a month or two, um, just for fun, because I thought it was a fun project. So that's a little bit about my bio. That uh, Mostly stuff that should be out there. And then as I do more of this, I'll have a sense of what it's like to be to have kind of everything on YouTube, and I'll probably be more open about saying more. So those are the Twitter comments. Again, sorry I missed them. I don't know what happened with OBS, but that's the deal.